Cool. So we'll be live in 1 second here.
Sweet.
Awesome. We are live.
All right.
We'll have some people funneling in here. Welcome those who are funneling in 2 past the hour, starting a few minutes late. But I'm Carlos Zamora with InvestorFuse, and this is Joe Theriault, Inherited Property Solutions, hailing from the Northeast Massachusetts area, New Hampshire. Joe, say hello, and we'll probably just be chilling here for a minute or two as people hop on.
Hey guys and women, what's going on?
Kush's coming on. Kush in the house. What's up, Kush?
What's up, buddy?
Dan, yeah, we're gonna have the mastermind people on here, the people that are in San Diego. So those people were able to hear your case study in person, which was awesome.
Cool. I think some of my peeps are coming on too, so they said they'd heckle and ask me dumb questions.
Love it.
I said they do that every day anyway. What's the difference?
That's awesome. But yeah, before we got on air here, Joe was happy to sell his house. Went from 2 mortgages to 0. Some agreements locked up this week already. So good stuff. I'm gonna share this on my page right now. Very cool. Well, let's start getting into it, Joe.
All right.
I'd love to hear a little bit about yourself, even personal, growing up. What made you get into real estate? How you transitioned to that? Maybe some previous careers or jobs you had before then.
Yeah. So it's a weird thing. I remember going to college, wanting to like do something. I didn't really have a calling, and I guess our generations and many generations, I guess, are, you're taught to go to college to be successful. And I didn't really do super hot in school, didn't care for it too much. And I remember this conversation distinctly. I remember walking out to my mailbox where I was growing up. I was probably like 17 years old, and my dad said something about being, why don't you just own an apartment building and then you could live rent free? And like something, I don't know, something went off in my mind at that time. And it was like a semi light bulb early on that I still remember to this day. And I guess that sparked some things, even though my parents never taught me about any of that kind of stuff. But I was like, wait a minute, I can get other people to pay my mortgage and I get to live rent free. Why isn't everybody doing this? Like, wait a minute. So that was, I'm turned 40, I don't know, last month. So that was 23 years ago. And so I couldn't figure out really how to make that dream happen at the time. I grew up in a machine shop. My family, my uncle, godfather, was in machining. So I was in a machine shop probably at about, I think, 13 years old. I was the chip monkey. I would go clean all the chips out of the machine. And, so I was in that field. But I remember my cousins working in the machine shop. And I was like, I don't want to be like these guys. They're like, I thought they were losers. I thought that blue collar workers were, I was like, they're just working for my uncle, making him rich. And I didn't understand at that time that was okay to make a living and just make a living, that there was nothing wrong with that. But I was a judgmental little douchebag at that time, and that's just how it kind of went. And so 17, 18 years old rolls around. I went to college for like 2 months, decided that that wasn't going to work out, and dropped out. I sold vacuums for about a month with Kirby. I killed my cousin's cat, and that was the end of that career. I don't know, some chemicals in the carpet, and the cats were dead. And so I decided to hang that hat up. And then I got into, what did I do? I did office installations for a while. This didn't ever occur to me to go machine and go work at the family business. And that, after a while, I got sick of that and ended up doing debt collection for a little while, which is basically, that was, I was 20. So that was 20 years ago. The internet wasn't huge. Like, it was still old school debt collection. And so I had a little taste there. Then my uncle called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, you want to come work at the shop? And you know what you're doing. Why don't you come down and work?" So I did. And I got back into machining, and he lived, the shop was probably about 45 minutes from where I wanted to live. I bought, and I like to have fun and party, and I bought an apartment building at, 21 years old. I bought my first apartment building. And back then, that was a pretty big deal. Like, now, I think real estate's a little more entrenched in younger generations of entrepreneurship and whatnot. Back then, being 21 and old in an apartment building was, for me, it was a big deal. And I was at one of those crossroads in my life at that time. I was 21, young, dumb, drinking, having a good old time. And the full intentions was to go buy a bunch more apartment buildings, because that was before the last rise in real estate prices and the last cycle. And instead of making the right-hand turn down the right road of going and buying more apartment buildings, we fixed up that first one, refinanced it, pulled out the money, and probably didn't make the best life choices at that time point. And fast forward between the years of 22 years old to 30 years old, I stopped drinking, period, at 24. I still haven't had a drink in, I don't know, it's been 16 years. And, I stopped at 24 and I left that whole lifestyle, and got married, ended up in Germany, went out to Texas. She was military, ended up in Texas. Of all places. I know there's probably a Texan on here, but I'm from the Northeast and we just don't jive sometimes. And the Boston accent, they call me out. I'm a Yankee down there, and that's just the way it is. And especially when you work in a machine shop, and I did down there. I was about 29 years old. My daughter was born, and 2 months after she was born, my wife, I came home one day, they were gone. And I was in Texas. I had probably no friends, and I was like, what is going on? Like, world, imploded on me at that point. And a couple months went by. I tried fixing things, right? The desperation, right? Oh, shit, she left. Oh, I got to fix everything, right? It just, it didn't happen. And I said, I'm coming back home. I left Texas, put my machinist toolbox in the back of my Xterra, Nissan Xterra at the time, and I had $500 in my pocket and no job lined up. I drove back up to New England and didn't let any of my family know I was coming. I just wanted to make it on my own, and my family's pretty entrenched. My mother's last name is Peabody. That's a pretty heavy, we've come off the Mayflower, basically. So I got a lot of connections here, and I wanted to make it for myself. I came up. I had $250 by the time I got back up to New Hampshire. That's all I had. No job, $250. And I was out of money by the time I got up here. And I remember sleeping in the back of the truck, staying in the campground, washing in the river. And I end up getting a job as a machinist again in Claremont, New Hampshire, which is like 2 hours north of the border of Mass. So it's in the sticks. There's nothing up there. And so for about a month and a half, I lived in the back of my truck, Walmart parking lot, the truck stop, and what was the other one? Oh, there was a Kmart up there at the time. And I refused to get a goddamn apartment. I wouldn't do it. I bought an 18-foot RV, and I towed that with my Xterra, 6-cylinder Xterra. That was as big as a home as I could get. And I decided that I was going to park that in the back of the machine shop, and I was going to stay in that and go to work in the morning until I saved up enough money to buy something. Well, I bought that, and the heat didn't work, and it was in the middle of January. So I spent about 2 weeks in January sleeping in an RV with a sleeping bag. And then my parents got a hold of me, and they said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And they gave me enough money to get to a campground and at least hook it up so I had heat, because I didn't want to take the money. But they talked me in that I might have been being a little overboard. And so I took that because I had a heavy child support payment at the time. It was more important that they had a roof over their head for me. So that's what kind of led me up to it. And I finally had about $5,000. I bought a multifamily building in Claremont. I lived in one unit. I cleaned out the others. Took me about 1.5 years to make that happen. I was still working full time, and refinanced that building. Took the cash, bought another building, refinanced that building, pulled the cash, bought another building, opened a yoga studio, and was still making tens of thousands of weapons and guns and machining. So I owned a yoga studio. I had 10 apartments, and I was working at the shop. A little bit of time went by. I met my current wife, and she lived down on the Mass border here. So I was at a jump-off point where I said to myself, we either stay doing what you've been doing or you go. And I loved that yoga studio. I truly did. So I sold off one of my buildings. I took the money. I closed my studio and left my job. And that was 3.5 years ago. And that's basically how I've arrived at being Joe, the inherited probate guy at this point. And I just 3.5 years ago dove into. So I can get into it deeper if you want me to.
Yeah, man.
But you tell me.
Yeah, man. Off air, in person, I've heard about 20% of that story. For those who are just joining us, we're on with Joe Theriault. He's up in the Northeast, Massachusetts, New Hampshire area. And if you weren't on live yet, you can go back and watch when we repost this. But he's getting deep into his personal story, how he got into real estate, burned some serious boats as far as leaving behind old mindsets, giving up drinking, refusing to get a job he didn't enjoy, and transferring back into real estate. So for those of you who are just joining, Joe Theriault, and we can definitely get into what you have going on now with the Inherited Property Solutions and kind of how you went from just getting back to the Northeast from Texas and building Inherited Property Solutions, what you have right now. And feel free, guys, to ask questions as Joe starts getting into this, how he started his real estate and as to where he is now. So feel free to comment in. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'll let Joe get back to it.
So basically, 3.5 years ago, I had $25,000 when I sold that building. And I really, truly knew nothing about how to make a living off of real estate. I knew how to passively, like the word passively, like anyone that knows real estate, passively is a bullshit term. And but anyway, I knew how to do it part-time on the side, let tenants drive me nuts. I knew that game well, but I really didn't know. I just knew that I had built up a machine shop from 4 employees to 90 employees, and I was the head catalyst of making that happen. And I was also, so I knew that I knew I could do it somehow, some way I would figure it out. I ended up making a whole process that's still being done today with gun manufacturing. And it took 2 years to do that. So I knew that if I could just get here and spend enough time doing it, I would figure it out somehow, some way. And so the 3.5 years ago, I had that $25,000 I needed to live on, and that doesn't go very far, starting a business and having to live on it. That money went quick. You know, I put out some signs. I did a first piece of yellow letters, right? What everyone tells you to do. And I just, for me anyway, I can't stand doing what everyone else is doing. It's just a thing for me. I'm just a stubborn guy from Mass. I can't stand it. It drives me nuts. But I did the yellow letters. I had to do something, and I put out some signs. And I got a couple calls, you know, early on. And I saw that when I dropped that first batch of like yellow letters, that the sheer amount of calls coming in was just, I can't scale this. I can't make this into a process. Like, my machinist mind wants to make everything into a process. And I saw right away that there's no way this is happening. And basically, I tripped on to Dan before InvestorFuse was InvestorFuse, and he was running Globy Flow and some other stuff. And I could understand it because I knew what was going on from the machinist standpoint. And so I kind of gravitated to, I forget what was that, Carlos, back then. What was he do? It was just Podio, right? And Globy.
Real automation.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Real automation was the first one we first came up with.
That's right. Okay. So that was like the thing going on at the time. And I was playing with that. I had nothing for like 6 months. I was out of money. And basically what ended up happening, though, in the meantime, is there were a lot of guys out there that wanted to take advantage of me. And from a standpoint of, he's a wholesaler, or they saw me as a way to bring deals to them. And for me, that just wasn't going to work. I needed an income. And at that time, one of the biggest developers in this area had basically got their hooks into me. And I politely told them to it's hard for me not to swear sometimes. I told them to buzz off in the nicest way I possibly could. And, you know, I don't regret that decision to this day. And I met Nick of AA Real Estate, and, you know, I paid him early on to kind of give me some coaching, and he did. And it was invaluable at that time. Because he was willing to be honest with me and willing just to, because I paid him, there was a coaching relationship there that he couldn't advise me to do anything that benefited him. So it was a really great relationship at that point, and we were in similar markets.
Yeah, and that's powerful for a lot of people coming up to have that mentor-mentee relationship, or just someone who can talk about business, all the different circumstances that come across. So I'm sure that's powerful.
It to this day, I can't recommend it enough to people. Is not some big guru, none of that BS. I mean, someone with boots on the ground that's legit, that you click with, and that's honest and really truly going to look out for you and that you possibly bring value to them. I mean, you call me. I'm not working with you unless you bring value to me. End of story. And he looked out for me early on. And what ended up happening, I finally got a call from a lady that wanted to sell her house. And that she was weird. She didn't want to give her name or property address or anything like that.
From a mailer?
Nope, from signage.
Okay.
And, yep. And she basically called in, and I made. Oops, sorry guys. And I made that case to her that I'm trustworthy. I did all that. So finally, she called me back like 2 weeks later. She finally gave me her name. She called me another 2 weeks later. I finally got the address, and I didn't pressure her. And she finally invited me over. At that time, I brought Nick with me, who then brought their closing attorney with us when we first went over. Like, this was a single mom. She wanted to feel comfortable in having us over, basically, right? You call off a sign sometimes. That's not always an easy gap to bridge. So basically, we went over. Nick went with me, and so did Megan Grignali from Phoenix Title. And we went in. She loved us, and she only wanted to do business with us. End of story. And what ended up happening is I didn't have the money to buy the house, so Nick put in an offer. Unfortunately for Nick, his offer was way too low, under what she owed for mortgage. And I kind of semi-walked away from that deal a little bit because I didn't have anybody else that I trusted. I wouldn't do an and/or signs at that time. I'm just, it doesn't work for me. I'm not an and/or signs kind of guy. And I didn't want to do it at that time. I basically would tell her, listen, I know someone that will buy it. Like, I know he has the money. I know he can execute. And I'm bringing those relationships to the table. Well, I had about $3,000 left in my bank account. And she called me again. And she said, Joe, I want to leave the country in 2 days. And I want you to buy the house. I called Ray, who's now my business partner, and said, and I had spoken to him a few times. He knew me, and he knew that I was trustworthy. And he said, Joe, I'll lend you the money, and you do the rehab, and we'll figure out the back end. I said, Ray, listen. I said, dude, I got like $3,000 in my bank. I, in good conscience, can't take your money and go rehab that house. I don't have the experience. And I'll be stressed out. I'm already stressed out. Never mind taking your money. So he said, how about this? I'll lend you the money. I'll buy the property and we'll rehab it together and we'll split the profits. I said, all right, fine, great. We bought that house in the 2 days. In 48 hours, we closed it. And 2 weeks later, we had an offer for $105,000 over what we bought it for. Neighbor, her daughter, had been looking for a house, and their real estate agent tracked us down. And we had an offer in, and they paid I think we had to put in like $10,000 to it or something, basically 10 or 15. So we walked away with a serious chunk of change, and I haven't looked back. That was the first, the first deal of it is what it came down to, and I learned so much from that one deal that has unfolded to kind of where I am now.
Yeah, man, took the words right out of my mouth. You haven't looked back since with all the success you've had, and recently, and how you've been able to scale recently after that big net there from that first deal. For anybody who's just joining us, we're on with Joe Theriault, Inherited Property Solutions. He's up in Massachusetts, New Hampshire area. Went through his personal background, just went over his first big rehab deal where he brought a funding partner and ended up splitting the profit. So if you're just tuning in, feel free to ask some questions if you have any questions. I see Gunnar just joined, InvestorFuse buddy of ours. We have a good amount of people on here live, so please keep the comments coming. Let us know you can hear us. And as Joe goes through how he just completed his first rehab deal with a funding partner, and he's going to continue to go through his business progression here throughout this live demo. Feel free to bring those comments, and we'll relay those to Joe.
All right. You got any comments so far, or am I free to keep rattling?
Nothing yet, man. I think people just want to hear more Joe.
All right, that's good. I like talking about myself. So basically, you know, I saw early on at that point who I wanted to do business with, and basically from that deal, I got licensed in New Hampshire. I got licensed in Mass as a realtor, whatever it's called. And I hate realtors. For the most part, it turns my stomach. But it made sense for the business because I needed to bring as much value to the table as I could at that time. So that deal basically unfolded. I got my license, and I was mailing probates, and I was going to the courthouse. I was still trying to, you know, all the, I guess, wholesaler techniques I was still trying to do with the probate thing. And I saw pretty quick that when I went to the courthouse, there was no one else going to the courthouse, pulling court records and going through them to see what executor or what case had real estate in it. I was like, no one's actually, he's like, you got to sign out every file. And this is not scalable at all. But I didn't quite know that then. All I knew is I had no competition here. No one was willing to dive in and do the work that it took to do it. Because what I saw was there was a lot of competition in other areas. I don't like that. I don't like that kind of competition. I've always grown up playing sports. Of course I like competition. But if I can edge you out by figuring something out that people are too lazy to do, I'm going to go do it. So that's what I ended up doing there, is just kind of honing in and going down to the courthouse, taking pictures of those records. I would be in the courthouse. I would take a picture once I found they had real estate in there. I would take that picture, and then I would send it out to the Philippines, and then they would put it in an Excel document for me. And because I had the executive's phone number at that time.
Got you. And Philippines, just to backtrack for anybody listening, that's like a virtual assistant that you would hire to do some more tedious type stuff like that.
Yep, bingo, you got it. Exactly. So I would get a spreadsheet, and I thought I was a man with like 100 phone numbers, you know, and that I had these phone numbers, and I called, and I was calling them, and honest enough, I was doing okay. I actually hand addressed like 100 envelopes and mailed them all, and I got some callback, and I got a property listed, and but I didn't see it. I didn't have the vision of what by no means of where I'm at right now, and but I saw all of a sudden that I was getting stuff, and people are responding to what I was doing. So me and my now current partner, we kept slowly but surely doing deals. I ended up I was meeting a lot of people. I was getting out there, and I had a good reputation. I was meeting some big players here in my area, and they called me. What was it, to buy like an 8-family, 6-family? We bought that low money, flipped that in probably about a month and a half. We kept like puttering along, but every deal we did, because when I came in the door, I was like really well trusted, and I hadn't put all these pieces together till now, which I'll get to, but I kept seeing little things that were like, wow, that's happening, because everyone in my area, including my partner, like, we were hitting some home runs. We were hitting some serious home runs, and 3-figure home run, $100,000 plus deals is what we're getting. And for a guy like me, I didn't need a ton of money to live at that time. I was living with my now wife, and I tend to live pretty within my means. So all the money just kept going back into whatever I was doing or trying to build and figure out. And I'm fortunate to be married to a woman that owns a marketing company that comes from running a large marketing division at Skillsoft, which is like online learning. So she came from really corporate, heavy back end marketing, and she was always like give me a hard time. She was like, "This is like so hokey, like yellow letters and bandit signs, and like this is like right. You got to think big marketing, and you look at the little schmucks doing this shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then when we knocked out that first home run that came from the sign, I was like, I wanted to be like, yeah, see, look at I'm Billy Badass the marketer now, and but she ended up going off and opening her own company, and which is called Snowbird Creatives, and has done some stuff for InvestorFuse and
Yep.
a lot of stuff for us. And I just couldn't get it. I wanted to keep doing more tactic-based marketing, and where like whatever, you just mail out yellow letters, you pick a list, and you don't really have any branding. I wanted to do that. That was like a consistent argument that I had with her of like these tactics. And she wanted to do a marketing strategy, like, big company marketing strategy, which I'm like, I'm not a detail guy. I'm just like, let's make shit happen kind of guy.
Right.
And when people talk details with me, I want to boff. I just don't go for it, right? So that was, I wanted to kind of make that introduction to things, because I'm trying to show everyone the players that are now on my team that now have allowed me to like really ramp this and really put gas on the fire, and because it was slow early on, and so that came into the picture. My now business partner, funding partner early on was in the picture, and we just kept kind of going. I said, okay, I'm going to do this Joe T Realtor thing. At the time, that was my next branding step, from going from no branding to some branding, and I was going to do the Joe T Realtor thing, right? And I just got that saying real estate agents suck. And right, so I don't even know where I came up with that, but whatever. I did. I obviously didn't consult my wife, and we went down. I started going down that road, but it was a building blocks at that time, because we started getting into figuring out a lot of things for my market. I was seeing these different probate deals and different things that I was working on, what these people wanted, and it was more than just a cash buyer. For me anyway, and what I'm going to speak to, and I'll just say it once, this is what works for me, and that's just what works.
Awesome.
No bullshit, no fluff. This is what works for me. And
awesome. We got a few questions after that. After we dive into that, we have a few strategy questions and people asking. So I'm excited to hear about this.
All right. So that's kind of that right there. That strategy of behind Joe T Realtor. We started picking colors that resonated with my target audience. Yeah, everything we did, to my business cards, to my website, to content we were creating early, even just with the Joe T Realtor, that morphed into Inherited Property Solutions. We did start working a lot of that type stuff that I personally think a lot of guys early on don't do. And I think personally it's a mistake, and that's just my opinion to things. No right or wrong. That's just me saying it. And because we could, debate it 1,000 ways to Sunday, and no one's right or wrong. It just works for me, and I can resonate with it, and I can grow off of it. So that basically right there is where we really started to go, and we started getting into doing events and trade show booths and really building content and talking with attorneys because now I can dive more into that. But I'll let you, before I go down that road, you take it.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly what some people are asking.
Yeah.
Malik, what's up, Josh Miller? Thank you for coming on. Patrick, hello from South Florida, Delray. Thank you guys, everybody, for coming on. You're on live with Joe Theriault, Inherited Property Solutions. He's getting into the nitty-gritty of how he acquires and sells these inherited leads, these inherited property solution leads. It's the company name. We're talking a little bit about the power of integrity, having a good reputation in your market. And also, Joe was just going over the power of branding, how he essentially went from no brand to the Joe T. Realtor brand to the Inherited Property Solution brand. And we have a few questions here, which I know you just answered. Malik is asking, are you reaching out to the executors on the property, and are you reaching out to real estate attorneys? And James is asking how you reach out to these probate attorneys specifically. How do you approach them with your marketing, or directly, how do you speak for them? James, Malik, thank you for those questions. I'm sure Joe will be happy to dive into those. Keep those questions coming, guys.
Yep. Two different categories for sure. Executors in what I call it is B2C marketing. So we're going right to the consumer or customer, whatever that is. And then attorneys, B2B marketing. So I could speak to each one of those things for a very, very long time. And I can, in short, sum it up. Executors, how do we reach out to them? There's only really a couple ways we can get in touch with them. It's either you text message them, you call them, you direct mail them, you door knock them. It's really what, if you want to hear the standard type of what you could potentially do. And for me, it comes down to we do the direct mail. Everything's branded out. When someone calls me on direct mail, I get the business. There is, I'd say, a 95% close rate. When I show up, I get the goddamn business. Because when I show up, I am an authority in the space. And it took me a little bit to figure it out. But the past year, I now am confident where I don't need to bullshit it anymore. Now I know my space, and I know how to help these people. So executors, as far as that goes, for me anyway, and how I do it, it's direct mail, and that's all plugged into InvestorFuse with a call rail phone number on it, and I can track every mail piece we do, every single touch, every piece has its own phone number on it, so I can track exactly what's going on there. In the past, since our mastermind, I've tripled down. I mean, we've tripled our budget, tripled everything since our whole mastermind and being there. So, kind of a big shout out to that whole group of guys, which I trust. I can call with a question. I'm not worried about stuff and them ripping me off or something like that. So I'll give a shout out where it's due. And, so to basically go back to the executive thing, for me, majority of it is direct mail. And, but it's heavily branded with my colors, with everything. When I show up, I have I have all branded stuff. I have a book. I'm an author. You show up and you put that stuff down on the table for that generation of baby boomers, they think you're the guy. They're not you are the man at that point. And then when I go and meet these executors, I come from a point of, I don't really give a shit if I buy your property. And for me, the quicker that happens, the quicker the game changes. Because I come from a point of providing them solutions and just giving them, I don't need your listing. I don't need you to sell me the house. I don't need you to ever call me again. And that's the power of it for me anyway, is once you get to that place, I don't know. That was a game changer.
Yeah, I hear you. That's a mindset shift on, hey, this is the value I can provide. Here's the credibility. I'm an established authority figure in this space, this niche. and take it or leave it. I don't really care. I think people may respond to that wanting to work with you more if you have just a transparent, hands-off approach, like you're saying.
Yeah, you're definitely spot on. And don't get me wrong, I don't come off in an arrogant way. I talk that way when we're here on the here, and my partner knows me. I'm always bitching and moaning and pretend like I'm Billy Badass, but I really do want to help these people, but I still deep down need to kind of have that approach to it. And what it just allows me to, I tell them everything I know. My partner wants me to shut up sometimes, right? But I tell them everything. What your house really could be listed for at retail value. What could it be done if I let you use some of my contractors? What could be done if I buy it off you cash? Like, I just got to give it to them, because if not, they're going to be wondering, and they're going to go call my competition, and then they're going to go call the real estate agent. No, I show up. I am the real estate agent. There is no competition for me, and I am the cash guy. So I take it all out. I take it all off the table. There's no reason to go talk to anybody else. That's the power of my brand right there. That's it. End of story. That's how you talk to executives, and that's how I make it happen.
Yeah, that's how you're closing at such a high rate.
Yeah.
Guys, we're on with Joe Theriault, Inherited Property Solutions. Keep these questions coming. Here's one for you, Joe, from Jose. Thank you for the question, Jose. He asked a good question. He says, when you're talking to these attorneys, how do you approach them? Like, what value do you bring to the attorney when you're starting a relationship with them?
Yeah, and I was going to, this ties back into the other guy that asked stuff about the attorneys. That is, in my opinion, in my experience, that is a long, long road. You better have a business. You're just going and asking an attorney to do business with you. It's not happening. It's just not. Go do something else. Like, all the bullshit that you read and all these guru things of, go reach out to the attorney. In my opinion, it's a bunch of bullshit, because I have reached out to attorneys and they want relationships. They're not going to refer their clients to you unless they trust you. And that's not going to come from mailing them. That's not going to come from calling them. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. Okay. I'm not going to say that because someone will call me and be like, see, Joe, I called 1,000 of them and I made a relationship. For me, anyway, I don't go at it from that approach. I go at it from what I can bring them and how I can help their customers, how I can put in I'll give them a fair price. I'll treat their customers with respect. I will work with the attorney to make it happen. There's a whole marketing strategy behind what we're doing right now to get in front of attorneys, and if you don't have a business or a brand, in my opinion, forget about it. I was in front of literally 500 attorneys on Friday, and even still, that's hard to capture those people. And even with a event and a trade show and a booth, and I mean, done up to the max, it's just not, it's long-term business building. And I think, I'm going to say it again because it pisses me off to no high end that the bullshit and bigger pockets and all the other stuff out there about, go call attorneys, and it's business building. It's deep business building and building relationships with these people and showing them that you can execute. And that's, now we got our biggest hit last year was, I'll back that up. The attorney called us from a direct mail piece of probate. He said, hey, I'm the attorney handling it. Do you want to go bid it? I said, yeah, fine. There was our biggest competition in the area was there. When I showed up, I was like, rolled my eyes. I wasn't as experienced as I am now. I was like, oh man, I'm not going to get this one. But it was in my hometown, and I convinced my partner to do it. We made good money on it, actually. And that attorney saw that I was willing to beat out everybody else, and we executed. We brought cash to the table. We weren't trying to wholesale or sign a contract. They saw we executed. About 6 months later, he said, Joe, I have my best friend. His parents passed, and they have this house in Lowell. Can you go check it out? We've told them about you, that you do a good job and you're fair and trustworthy, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I already had the business, never mind showing up with my branding,
Right.
I already was in the door.
Yeah, well, the branding helped bring you the business.
Oh, for sure.
And that's the theme that I'm hearing here. Like throughout the live presentation we've been doing, you've been talking about how important it is to establish credibility with these clients, these sellers that you're working with, and the brand really helps you do that. And I've been thinking throughout this live demo too that it may even be more important when you're working with these inherited property leads. As somebody that had somebody pass away in their family, like you need to be even more delicate, establish more credibility, and be even more upfront, providing value, willing to work with these lawyers, building relationships with them, going the extra mile for them, than in other cases like code violation leads or absentee owner, anything like that, and the lead source become willing. So I'm really loving that you're diving deep into that. We have a quick question on marketing, guys. If you're just tuning in, Joe Theriault, Inherited Property Solutions. He's up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, really going deep here on his business, which we love to hear. Malik is asking, this may be a question for the marketing department. Andy, what colors do you use for your letters, envelopes, and postcards?
You let me, yeah, right. I'm hesitant on nuts and bolts of what I use, but you can probably go to my website and see exactly what I'm doing. You can also, because my wife owns a marketing business, call Snowbird Creatives and get her to help you with a marketing strategy, because it really comes down to more than just colors. I won't give you that little small answer, to be honest. Out of respect for my own business and what I've built, it comes down to marketing strategy and little tactics like that. Not saying that they're little as to the question that Malik asked, correct, Malik?
Right.
Not saying it's little, okay? That's not what I mean by that. I tend to say whatever comes to my mouth, all right? So don't take it the wrong way. It's not little, but it's a tactic, and it's more than just colors. It's build a brand for yourself and figure out what works for you, not copy what Joe does. That's what I wanted to drive at in the long run was, if you want to copy me, call my marketing department. I'll sell you a whole spin-off of Inherited Property Solutions, and we'll make an Inherited Property Solutions for you right in whatever county you're in. Great, no problem, right? What the point of this is, though, which I really don't want that, but if you really truly want it, okay, fine. I'm not going to refuse it. But the whole point of this is to find your own voice and find out who you are and what works for you, and truly build a business and build an overall strategy. And this is straight from my wife. This isn't just Joe saying this. It's been beat into my head, and now I've seen the results of it, because I argued for a long time about it. It's up top and having that strategy. Maybe it's not be the inherited guy. Maybe it's be the land guy. Maybe it's be the foreclosure guy. Like, really find something that resonates with you, because I'll tell you what, if you don't really want to help people in the inherited arena, there's so many more pieces that go on in the probate besides just probate. That's another term that pisses me off, is people say probate. And again, it comes from the guru language, in my opinion anyway. There's so much more to this market, so much. And probate limits your vision. And the point of that is why the colors are semi-irrelevant and all of that is, you really truly got to take the time to help these people. It's not just a branding pitch and a business pitch. Like today, I put a piece of business under agreement, and this is case in point right here. A piece of business that has taken me 2 years to close. This business is long term. It's this friend of mine, a friend of my wife. Her dad was 85 years old, and you know, in that dementia area, having dementia issues and Alzheimer's and whatnot, right? But he wasn't quite willing to leave the house. She called me because she knew that I did this type of stuff and knew that I was for real. And she called me and said, hey, can you come and look at the house? And can you tell me what to do? We don't know about Medicaid, and we don't know about VA, and get my dad into a nursing home, and we don't know any of this stuff. And I said, okay, fine, I'll come out. And I have a good network of attorneys and closing people. Like, I know what I'm doing here. And I went out and saw the house, and she's in tears, and her dad's having a tough time. The house is got a typical house that they let go after 20 years. That generation of people held on. They are the children of the Depression, or from the Depression. They hold on to everything. That's just the way it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. And me showing up and not being judgy and being like, oh, this place is a fucking dump, right? Right? It's not what it is. It's nothing to do with the physical. I already know what I'm walking into, and why I go back to, it's not about the colors of what's on your stuff. It's really not. It's just a tactic for me. And this 2 years where it caught, I won't say the person's name. I went out, saw the house, and I hooked her up with my one of my probate attorneys that does probate and senior care, and she reached out to her, and they had a conversation. And this is over a period of 2 years. She reached out to me again, asked me a couple more questions, and then last week she calls me and says, Joe, I'm ready. Can you guys come out? Can you come out and check out this property? I took my partner down, and we went and looked at it, and we put in yesterday, put in our offer, and we got the business this morning. And that still has questions, because you got to know what to do on the PNS, because the house is owned in a life estate. The dad has dementia. He's the one that's on title. Like, you got to know what you're doing with this stuff. This isn't like in Medicaid and veterans. This shit isn't, you got to know your stuff, man, or you're going to really burn people. So that's my answer to that question right there. And that was a long-winded answer to what. You can go to my website and see my colors. It's obvious,
Yeah, Inherited Property Solutions.
Yes.
No, man, it's clear how much you care about the clients you're working with, not just dealing with them in person, but the amount of time you put into research to learn about all these services, the Medicaid, the VA, all the real estate stuff, of course. So that's definitely very apparent. I'm going to check to see if we got any more questions here. Raymond, thank you for the question. How valuable is that partnership today? We'll probably close up here in the next 15 minutes or so. I definitely want to leave room for questions at the end. But Raymond just asked, how valuable is that partnership today?
Oh, that's my partner. I knew he was going to heckle me. He told me he was going to heckle. It was a point of contention. It was a point of contention for us at Mastermind. I remember many people in the room saying, "Don't you dare sell half your business to some shady shark." And it was a very, very a point of contention in the room. But the couple people that know me deep knew that I didn't really give a rat's ass what anyone was saying, that I already had my mind made up. I was just trying to figure out how to get there from here, and how to make that all happen. So to answer that question, it's allowed us to triple down. We put 3 pieces of solid rehab business under agreement this week, and it's not, and that's huge. This is like, and these are profitable deals that are right up our avenue of everything. It's so to answer that, most people would say, and I sold him half the business right in November on the way back from one of our conferences, and it's allowed for. He used to run a 100-person company, so I'm not detail oriented. He is, and that's really kind of. And he does more of the construction side, which allows me to keep driving in leads. Candy does more of the overall marketing and making sure all that. There's so much that goes into scaling it and nuts and bolts that InvestorFuse, my partner Ray, Candy, my other teammate Jason. I can't do it without all these people. I can't scale and really grow without the things that I run with.
Yeah, man. And what's Candy's website again? Malik said he's definitely going to get in touch with Candy. I wanted to put it on the snowbirdcreative.com.
Yeah, snowbirdcreatives, plural.com.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I can tell, obviously, at the mastermind, Joe Theriault, Inherited Property Solutions, we're on with right now. And the mastermind that he's referring to is our mastermind event that we hosted at the end of October 2017 in San Diego. And we had some of our members do case study presentations to the entire group to get open feedback. So kind of what Joe is doing now, he's giving open feedback on the webinar, talking about his business, opening up for questions. But at that point, he brought up his funding partner, and he's made that decision. Was that 4 months ago now?
Yeah.
So it looks like you made a pretty dang good decision because you're able to put 3 properties under contract this week. A lot of success. So where do you see yourself moving forward here, Joe? Staying with this same model and staying with the inherited leads? Yeah,
if it was up to me, I need to keep doing this, keep making sure the business is growing, and we're getting in front of more attorneys, getting more relationships built, getting these long-term investments that I've made, because all that B2B type stuff is long-term plays and not the direct mail plays where it's kind of like a shorter sales cycle. Yeah. The B2C stuff, B2B stuff is definitely a longer play. So I'd like to see that stuff up and rolling. And really, I'd love to be personally helping others really do this stuff. And I mean, like, we just got featured on like seniorcare.com. Like, I would love to really bring this to other people. I think a lot of investors don't really, I don't know, just my opinion, don't take it the wrong way. Well, I don't want to fucking have everyone emailing me, Joe, you don't know what you're talking about. I just think the inherited thing is more than what people understand it. And I'd love to be able to bring it more nationwide and do some things on a greater scale, helping more seniors. And we're doing more, we're getting in front of, we're getting something together for teaching a class to realtors, and where, I don't, just so much is like crazy unfoldments have happened with a massive title company in the area wants to get behind us and help develop more content, because that's what I do, is develop content, a lot of it for, and I just would love to be more of take my experience and bring it to a bigger network of people and really be able to help more. Absolutely, man. I love hearing that. And on top of establishing the credibility, genuinely caring and taking action for your clients, these sellers, these potentially older sellers, it's very clear that I'm starting to think that you're saying that, or you may have this thought that if you're in the real estate business, you want to work with these probate or inherited leads, you should almost just primarily focus on that instead of having probate as just one of your 8 different lists that you mail to. Yeah, I mean, and I can only speak to that for myself. I'm not volume based to a certain degree. I don't have any other businesses. I don't work foreclosures. I don't work any other lists. So unless I can make it happen from this, which can shoot you in the foot sometimes if you're looking to make more money, it's a longer term play for me. Yeah. It really is. I know that I want something, I want something more in 5 to 10 years. I want a brand. I want something, because I think it's just always changing with the different tactics we're doing as investors, and I think robots are going to replace us all soon enough. So I want to make sure that I got something that's built and I have a strong reputation behind it. Doesn't matter what the market's doing. I have a brand and a business that's been built.
Absolutely. So I want to open it up to questions now. Thank you. It looks like we have about the same number of people on, so pretty much everybody has stayed on throughout the presentation. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate Joe's time. So if you guys have some questions, feel free to type those into the comment box, and we will have Joe share those. Anything that you want to keep close to vest, Joe, obviously feel free to do so. Anything that you're willing to share, people are going to get a ton of value from. Kush has a good comment. You know Kush from San Diego, the mastermind a few months ago we were at. Kush said, our coaches have always said when you partner with someone one-on-one, it shouldn't equal 2. It should equal at least 3. It looks like it does for you, so clearly you did the right thing. So thank you, Kush, for that.
Yeah, blow my partner's head up. He's on the call. Man, he's going to not be able to get his head out the door, Kush. Come on, man.
And then here's a great question from Nathan. And I'm sure that this answer may have changed from when you first got into looking at the probate leads versus where you're at now, where you're scaling up and you're even talking about doing national stuff. How are you sourcing your probate leads? Are you or someone from your team manually going to the county, or do you have a vendor you source them from?
Yeah, we don't. Let's see. Oh man, that's a. Do we have New Hampshire people on here? Do you know, Carlos, if there's anyone from my market here before I get into that? That's
yeah. Can anyone do us a solid, be an honest Abe here, and let us know if you are in Joe's market, New Hampshire, Massachusetts? While we're waiting for that question, Tammy, thank you so much. Tammy has a thank you for you, Joe.
Yeah.
I would like to say thanks for the background story as well as the tidbits during the remainder of the webinar. I grew up in Lynn, Massachusetts, and it was refreshing to hear your voice.
Lynn, City of Sin. I know it well. Yep.
Awesome. Malik's in New Jersey. I know we had a couple questions. And Malik, I put that website, Candy's website. I will validate her marketing efforts are absolutely amazing. She's done at least double-digit InvestorFuse members. I want to say their follow-up sequences, which are those drip campaigns that we have in InvestorFuse, where you can set up the automated text, email, ringless voicemail, internal tasks, and she's done that for a ton of InvestorFuse members who all gave her A+ feedback. So Candy, snowbirdcreatives.com, highly recommended. And I'm not getting any feedback here from anybody that's in the market. Tammy said she's in Lynn, Mass, MA, but
yep.
Anybody. So Nathan, we're answering your question now.
All right. So yeah, it's so much behind that for that type of stuff that it is. Fortunately, New Hampshire has a different process. I suggest that you find where they are. I don't like using a third-party provider for those, so we are scraping. Hand scraping them, and they get sent out to the Philippines. And because it's in a PDF format where I need to scrape them from New Hampshire, they have to get put into an Excel spreadsheet, and then they get sent over to a skip tracer, and we get the executor's phone, email, and but obviously we've got their mailing address already. What we need to do is a lot of times we don't go to the courthouse anymore. What we do, and here's a little tidbit, is because there's no way to do this except for this. I've even tried to. I'm not a software guy, if you can't tell. So I couldn't figure out how to do it. We basically, if for instance it shows the decedent, the dead person, and then it shows the executor and the executor's address and the attorney's info. The tidbit would be is you need to find out if it has real estate. And because from studies I've done, it doesn't make sense to mail to the whole probate list because about only 25 to 30% have actual real estate. So your biggest thing you need to find out in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, I'm pretty lucky where we can see, I'll go and just research the tax assessor's office. So if Tim Smith died, I'll go and Tim Smith died in, let's just say, Lynn, Massachusetts. I'll go and look and see if Tim Smith had real estate. Before I even go and send it, it's actually in we have work instructions that have all been made. So the work instruction, the guy in the Philippines has it, he checks it, sees if it has real estate. If it has real estate, then it gets put into our Excel spreadsheet. From there, it goes over to the skip tracer, and then we have the information. and that's just one small spot there. But we have work instructions completely built for that. I don't have a court researcher, and I hate probateleads.com. That's just me.
Great tidbit there to find out, and it obviously makes a ton of sense to have you and or someone on your team find out if there's actually real estate before sending them mail or skip trace and calling them, whatever it may be. So that's a great tidbit there. And you're not a fan, obviously, of probate.com, so maybe like the national vendors for probate or inherited leads.
Yeah, me personally, no. I'm not saying they don't work or anything like that. I'm not saying I wouldn't think about it for some other areas, but for me, I have my process, and that's what I do.
Very cool. Let me see if anything else came in on here. But yeah, man, great stuff so far. Joe Theriault, Inherited Property Solutions, really getting into the personal, his motivation, how he grew up, how he got into real estate, and kind of how he just chiseled his way down this path of working specifically with inherited property owners, sometimes them being older senior sellers, and obviously has a lot of compassion and empathy towards them, and it really shows in the research you do and make yourself knowledgeable in that space. So hats off to you in that regard for sure, Joe.
Thanks, man.
Let's see. Any questions, guys, for Joe before we wrap up? Again, highly recommend his wife, Candy, Creative Snowbird, or what is it? SnowbirdCreative.com. SnowbirdCreatives.com. And feel free to ask any questions here. Let me check on my browser. Oh, and Joe, anything you want to close with as I'm waiting for questions to hop in? It still looks like we have around the same amount of people that are on live watching.
Yeah, no, I mean, I go back to really find out, from my experience anyway, and again, what works for me is just find what works for you, and dig in and make a business for yourself out of it. That's the only thing I can say, and that don't always work for everybody by any stretch. There's plenty of guys in that mastermind that do the wider approach, and that works for them. And kudos for me and my personality. I just know myself well enough, and this works for me.
Yeah, man, couldn't have said it better myself. I was interviewing Gary Horton yesterday, who does the land deals now. Yeah, he kind of had the same thing. It's like early on in your real estate career, you might have a little bit of a gray area or identity crisis. You don't know exactly what you want to do, but if you stick with it, stay consistent, keep a focus on your integrity and building relationships and actually providing value and having compassion and empathy with your clients, you eventually find your place. If you got into land deals, which he's doing primarily, you're with Inherited Property Solutions now. So that's awesome to see. Awesome. Well, no more questions wrapping up. Joe, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to do it again sometime. I'm sure hopefully Candy gets some increase here. If people wanted to reach out to you, what would you say?
I would say email me is the best way, and that's joe@inheritedpropertysolutions.com. You can probably track me down on Facebook because I'm a member of the InvestorFuse Facebook group, so I do enough bitching and moaning on there, so you can probably find me there pretty easy, and Facebook me, and so that's my two easiest ways to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Got a lot of thank yous coming into you, Joe. Nathan McMasters, I talked to you recently. Thank you for coming on, watching. And we're going to keep doing these pretty frequently here to provide you guys value. And we want to go into different niches, different personalities, and really just provide you guys some value on investors that are on the platform that are crushing it and that are great people, happy to help you and help your business. And Joe is obviously one of those. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Joe, we'll talk soon.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Fusers.
All right. Thanks, man. Talk to you.